Washington State 30, USC 27, Mark Rogers TV with instant analysis. We saw the effort from Pullman, and the Cougars win it over the Trojans as a 5-point underdog. A beat-up USC bunch could not get it done again on the road. They had a second consecutive difficult time on the road. Last week, they pulled it out against Cal, not so much this time against Washington State. So two quarterbacks, top five quarterbacks in the nation hit the field at the start of this game, and one in Sam Darnold, more highly regarded because of his bigger frame, his bigger arm, and his pro potential. But he came into the game with 9 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and his play was up and down. And then his play was up and down in this game as well. Luke Falk came into the game with a much better resume in 2017, 14 touchdowns and 1 interception, and he was the much better and more consistent quarterback throughout this game, and it made a huge difference. Darnold was scattershot. Yes, if you would pick out the 5, let's see, top plays for each quarterback in this game, Darnold looked more impressive on those rare occasions, but consistency counts to move the sticks, to score points, and to convert when needed. And Luke Falk was the better quarterback in this game, 34 of 51, and he suffered several drop passes, especially in the first half, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Darnold just 15 of 29, and that's after finishing with a flurry, 5 of 6 on the final drive as USC goes down to 4-1 now, losing at Washington State. The Cougars now in prime position, getting past that big first major hurdle in the Pac-12. So here are my takeaways for Washington State. Why is this a different football program than it was when Mike Leach arrived, and even under Leach for the first 3 or 4 years? It has to do with running game and defense. They first added a running game, and even though they don't like to go to it, they utilize those running backs in a number of ways. We saw it on the shuttle pass. That was the game-winning touchdown, or it took the lead at the time at 27-20. Jamal Murrow, tremendously designed play. Mike Leach's offenses are classic screen offenses, and they are also shovel pass offenses, and that one was beautifully designed. The offensive line doing a great job to score what was the 27-20 lead, the last touchdown for the Cougars, to put them in position to win this game. And, of course, USC did come back, and Darnold did show his mettle on that second to final drive in which he threw 2 beautiful passes to close out the drive. Of course, Tyler Vaughn's, his coming out party nationally was on this night. If you know anything about USC football and follow the Trojans, you have been waiting to see this guy play on the big stage, and you have seen glimpses of his potential greatness the first few weeks of this season, and he's wiry, he's lean, he's long, he has great hands, he can stop and go, and is just a phenomenal talent. He's the one that hauled in the 4th and 13 play that USC, pretty much a conservative coach would have said, okay, 6 minutes left in the game, we can punt here, we can stop them, we'll get the ball back in decent field position if we can get a 3 and out. But knowing the arm of Darnold, knowing the playmakers, and knowing the field position, and not wanting to give up that football to the Washington State offense one more time, Clay Helton rolled the dice, and it worked. The 4th and 13, followed by the Darnold long play to Vaughns again. So it was Vaughns on back-to-back plays, and then after stuffed a couple times down near the goal line, Darnold took it in off the read option to make it a 27-all game. Luke Falk led another drive down the field that set up, or he had earlier, my bad. Of course, this was the play of the game. It was the Mike linebacker, the backup, who shot in unblocked. Jahad Woods, the strip sack, and there's your ball game. It set up Washington State for the game-winning field goal, and Eric Powell converted to make it 30-27. Washington State fans, think back 2 years to the Stanford game. Luke Falk brought you down the field, put you in a position to win the game, but your field goal kicker missed, and that cost you the Pac-12 North Division and a trip to the Rose Bowl. Maybe Washington State and a game-winning field goal this time that went through the uprights in Pullman will lead them onto the Rose Bowl. a number of big football games left to be played against the likes of Stanford and Washington, in particular for Washington State, but they're off to a 5-0 start. Now they will finally have to hit the road. It was much discussed during the game tonight. 5 of 7 on the road to conclude the season after finishing the first 5 games all at home in the friendly confines in front of the 33,000. So USC Washington State, they come out of the gate. Jamal Murrow with a couple big plays early. And I want to mention the play of Rasheem Green. He was pushing the pocket. It wasn't noticed until late in the broadcast, but if you watch the first series for Washington State, forced to kick a field goal, Rasheem Green was pushing the pocket and making life difficult for Luke Falk much of the night. So despite pressure on each quarterback, it seemed to affect Darnold most of the time, but Luke Falk stood in there. The knock against him was much discussed in regards to him holding the football too long, going through his reads each and every time. Sometimes that pays off, sometimes it doesn't. I want to take note of the continent. Of course, this is one Cody O'Connell. He's a mammoth offensive lineman, left tackle for Washington State. He's only the second unanimous All-American for Washington State, and there were several plays during the game in which he made a difference in the running game and in pass protection to move the football for Washington State. The beat-up USC offensive line did not help in this one. They came in beat up, and then once Chuma Edoga had to leave the game, big number 70. They had both tackles out of the game. Andrew Voorhees, who played considerable time against Texas, was forced into action along with Clayton Johnston. And so USC had 2 extremely young tackles playing most of the night, and it proved possibly to be their undoing because Darnold, despite the 15 of 29 and the poor throws at times, much of it under duress. Ronald Jones, of course, had a few big runs in the first half, highlighted by the 86-yarder that gave USC a 17-10 lead. But this is one beat-up but very talented football team. And talking about USC, they get a bit of a break. Not that they don't play, not that their bye isn't at the end of the season, which is not going to do them much good unless they make the Pac-12 championship game. But they take on Oregon State next week. For Washington State, they've got a date with Oregon on the road. So their first trip outside the state, they go to Oregon at 5-0. They will, of course, rise in the rankings and in the Mark Rogers TV rankings as well. USC, after the Oregon State game next week, 2 more difficult contests against undefeated Utah and a Notre Dame team that has taken on the likes of Michigan State in winning that game last week, and then a few weeks back against Georgia, just losing by 1 point against a top 10 team. All right, I don't see too many more notes here. Washington State's punting almost cost them. They repeatedly had poor punts that set up the Trojans near midfield. Back-to-back 19 and 17-yard punts for Washington State. That needs to be cleaned up, and they actually tried 3 punters in this game. On the flip side, USC with Reed Budrovich, one of the tremendous punters in the nation, continually pinned Washington State inside the 10-yard line, and it cost Washington State a number of times, and in particular that amazing play that Uchenna Nwasu turned in with the deflected interception that then he was batted off the offensive lineman, and then he caught while on his back on the ground. And if you did not get a chance to watch the game tonight, you have got to check out that play on YouTube, one of the more athletic plays you could ever imagine. Defensive front 7 guy turning in inside the 5-yard line, and it was actually a Washington State defensive stand after that proved costly for the Trojans, because it should have been a touchdown for the Trojans inside the 5. They were right down near the 2-yard line after the Owasu interception, but Washington State kept them out. This Washington State program, again, it's difficult to recruit to the Northwest. They had 40 California kids, many of them bypassed by the likes of USC and UCLA on this roster, getting payback for being snubbed. Many of them, not all, but many of them by USC, and they win it. It must be sweet, 30-27. Join me on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe right here and catch some of the best analysis of college football, not just from myself, but from the best bloggers and broadcasters in college football. Long-form conversations. You can catch the audio only on iTunes, Podbean, and Stitcher. Just search Mark Rogers TV. And, of course, we will set you up for Saturday football as well tomorrow with a ton of instant analysis with the big games. Clemson, Virginia Tech, Northwestern, Wisconsin, big games in the SEC with Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, and on and on. We always appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you commenting, and we try to get to as many comments as possible. And we continue to provide as much college football as we possibly can. As I often say, Mark Rogers TV, college football 24/7, 365. We will see you next time. Cougars now 5-0. Where do they go in the rankings? Well, we will find out, and I will release my top 25 after the weekend's play. We'll see you next time.